In today's lesson, we'll be learning how to calculate the slope between 2 points. If you recall, slope is equal to the rise over run. As well, slope can be represented with the variable of m. And last but not least, a point is a coordinate, and it is made up of a x-coordinate and a y-coordinate. In our first example, we want to find the slope and y-intercept of this line. Afterwards, we want to put these two values together and state the equation of the line. This should be review for most of you. The easiest thing to start off with is the y-intercept, and that is where the line crosses the y-axis. I'm going to mark this down. That is the y-intercept. And the variable we use for y-intercept is b. b is equal to -2. Now let's calculate the slope. We're going to look for 2 points on the line which happen to land on the grid lines, because that is a little bit easier to do. And I found 2 points on the line which happen to land on the grid lines. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make my triangle. I want to figure out the rise and I want to figure out the run. The rise here is 3 units and the run over here is equal to 2 units. Once I have my rise and run values, I can calculate the slope. Slope is equal to rise over run, which is then equal to 3/2. You can't simplify this any further, so just leave it as an improper fraction. Let's zoom out to see all the work that we've done for this one example so far. As you can see, we've just figured out the y-intercept, and we've also figured out the slope. Since we have these two values, we can write the equation of the line. And let's do that on the side. Y equals mx plus b is the general equation of a line in slope-intercept form. We've figured out what the slope is, and we've figured out what the y-intercept is. Therefore, we can write the equation of this line, which would be equal to y is equal to 3/2x minus 2. And that would be the equation of our line. You've already learned that slope is equal to rise over run. However, there is another way of figuring out slope, and you can do that using this equation. M is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. You can use this equation when you have 2 points. In other words, when you have 2 coordinates. One of these coordinates would be x1, y1, while the other coordinate would be x2, y2. And if you have those 2 points, you can put those numbers into this equation and figure out the slope. In our second example, we want to find the slope and y-intercept of this line. Then afterwards, we want to state the equation of the line. However, we want to use this new slope equation that I just taught you in the previous slide. Our first step is to find 2 points on this line, any 2 points. Preferably, you want to find points that are on the major grid lines. So I'm going to choose this point over here, and I'm going to choose this point over here. Once you find 2 points, I do not want you to use the triangle which we've been using up to this point. I want you to figure out the coordinates of these points. The coordinate of that point is -4 and 4, and the coordinate of this point is -2 and +1. Once we figured out our coordinates, I want you to label these coordinates. This would be considered x1, y1. This would be considered x2, y2. Let's use this new slope equation. M is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We're going to substitute in these values. y2 is 1. I'm going to put that in brackets. y1 is 4. x2 is negative 2. And x1 is negative 4. I'm going to go ahead and clean up some of these brackets and some of these signs. You'll notice that we have two negative signs there, so we have to do something to that. But in the meantime, let's remove some of these brackets. On the top, I have 1 minus 4, and on the bottom, I have negative 2 plus 4, because when you have two subtraction signs together, that becomes positive. Let's simplify these numbers. 1 minus 4 is negative 3. If you have to use a number line, go ahead and do that. Minus 2 plus 4 is positive 2. If you look carefully, you'll notice that our slope is negative, and that matches up with our line, which has a negative slope since it's pointing downwards. Once we figured out the slope, finding the y-intercept should be no problem at all. We're just going to look at the point at which the line crosses the y-axis, which is right over here. I'm going to make a little label. That is the y-intercept, and the value of the y-intercept is negative 2. Once we have the y-intercept and the value of the slope, we can write the equation of this line. So I'm just going to circle the y-intercept value, and let's go ahead and write the equation of the line. Remember, the general equation of a line is y is equal to mx plus b. However, we've already figured out what m is equal to. M is equal to negative 3 over 2, and b is negative 2. Therefore, the equation of our line is y is equal to negative 3 over 2, x minus 2. At this point, you might be asking yourself, why do I need to use this new equation? Why can't I just use that triangle I've been using all this time? Well, what happens if you're not given a diagram, or if you've been given coordinates that are very difficult to graph, such as these ones, 333 and 227. So in this example, we want to find the slope of the line which passes through these given points. Let's start with the slope equation, the new one. M is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. To make life easier for ourselves, let's label these coordinates which have been given to us. I'm going to label this x1, y1, and I'm going to label this x2, y2. That makes it a lot clearer when you're substituting in values into your equation. Let's go ahead and do that. y2 is 27, y1 is 33, x2 is 2, and x1 is 3. Let's clean up some of these brackets since we don't really need them. So that gives us 27 minus 33 and 2 minus 3. 27 minus 33 is negative 6, and 2 subtract 3 is negative 1. Let's simplify this since we can. If you recall, 6 divided by 1 is just 6. A negative divided by a negative is positive. Therefore, you don't write any sign in front of the 6. And our slope is 6. And that is how you can figure out the slope of a line using 2 points and when not given a diagram.